Let me share a recent event that happened to me. A supplement salesperson recently came into our practice brandishing bottles of well-packaged, e-commerce ready vitamins or supplements, what have you, claiming they held the key to ultimate health, full of, let me say, Eastern promise, and tried to get our staff to sell or market his products. He went on to say that these aren't your average vitamins, he said, his voice an overly confident tone that they, meaning his vitamins, have the highest absorption rates ever. And so my professional curiosity started to kick in. I asked a simple question. What do you mean by absorption? How does that actually absorption work? This is a subject that I've been wrestling with in my mind, so I wanted to see this expert's opinion on this topic. His confident smile wavered, and then he launched into a rambling, jargon-filled monologue about his 25 years of experience, but masterfully deflected the question. It was a clear observation that a person who has done the same thing over and over again for 1 year, but 25 times, and it didn't clear up anything for me. In other words, it was like trust me or trust the science. It made me wonder how many people just accept these theories, like absorption, at face value. And I'm not even sure if all of his 25 years did anyone ever put forth this query. Now, this is not a pejorative or put down on this salesman. In broader terms, I painting all quote-unquote experts in general with the same brush. Okay, so let me move forward to the point of this story. I want to tell you about a fundamental shift in my understanding of how life actually works. A shift that began with a simple question about red blood cells and, well, led me to reject one of the most basic assumptions in biology. And don't worry, I will tie all of this back to the vitamin salesperson. Okay, so it started with something that should have been impossible, right? I was studying the research that had been done on red blood cells, and I came across findings that conventional biology simply couldn't explain. The research showed that these cells contain virtually no sodium, despite living their entire existence in sodium-rich blood. According to everything I'd been taught, this was like finding a sponge that somehow remains dry while floating in water. The standard explanation involved energy-consuming pumps, complex molecular machines that supposedly work around the clock to keep sodium out. But as I looked at the data from multiple studies, the math it didn't add up. The energy required for such constant pumping should have exhausted these cells, and yet there they were, maintaining their sodium-free state effortlessly. That's when I realized I was looking at this all wrong. And so, what if cells don't work like sponges at all? Think about a hamburger for a moment. When you bite into it, you don't see water dripping out, yet it's roughly 70% water, the same percentage as living cells. The water isn't freely sloshing around, it's structured, organized, held in place by the meat's protein matrix. This became my breakthrough metaphor, really. What if cells aren't absorption-based systems that soak up and squeeze out nutrients like sponges? What if they're more like that hamburger, structured systems where water and nutrients are electromagnetically organized into coherent patterns? This intuition led me to the work of Gilbert N. Ling, a Chinese-born physiologist whose association-induction hypothesis completely revolutionized my understanding of cellular function. For those of you who do not know what the term induction means, think of it like, for example, an induction stove heats metal pots by using a magnetic field to make the metal heat up, but it doesn't work on plastic. And that's how the body works. Your body replicates what you put into or on the body. I digress. And so Ling had spent decades using microelectrodes to measure what was actually happening inside cells. And his findings were, well, they were radical. According to Ling, cells maintain what he called a living state, a highly ordered, low-entropy condition where proteins, water, and ions exist in close association with each other. But here's the crucial part, and this is where it gets really interesting. This organization isn't maintained by absorption and pumping. It's maintained by electromagnetic induction. Ling described living cells as, and I'm quoting here, electronic machines, where long-range information and energy transfer is achieved by repetitions of short-range propagation of electrical polarization and depolarization or induction. In simpler terms, cells use electromagnetic fields to structure their internal environment. This meant nutrients weren't being absorbed in the conventional sense. Instead, they were being inducted into cellular structure, electromagnetically positioned, and held in place by the cell's own electrical field patterns. The cell becomes a dynamic electromagnetic system that replicates and maintains precise molecular arrangements without traditional absorption mechanisms. Imagine your digestive tract is along from mouth to your anus, tunnel with 4 main layers that is impermeable to liquid, or anything for that matter, just like a steel-belted radial tire. Now, the most profound realization came when I understood Ling's insights about cellular water. In conventional biology, cell water is treated as just bulk water with stuff dissolved in it. But Ling showed that, quote, cell water is polarized and oriented and thus dynamically structured. This structured water doesn't behave like regular water. It's electromagnetically organized into what Ling called polarized multilayers around proteins. Nutrients and ions don't dissolve into this water. They become part of its electromagnetic structure. The cell replicates the precise conditions needed for life through inductive field effects, not through absorption and transport. Now, this isn't just a minor modification to existing theory, it's a complete paradigm shift. If Ling is correct, then the fundamental mechanism of life isn't chemical absorption, but electromagnetic induction. The body doesn't absorb nutrients, it electromagnetically replicates the molecular conditions necessary for cellular function. Think about what this means. Every cell in your body is constantly using electromagnetic fields to maintain its structure, to position water molecules, to organize proteins, to maintain ionic gradients, not through energy-expensive pumping, but through electromagnetic replication of stable, ordered states. The logic is compelling because it resolves so many paradoxes that conventional biology struggles to explain. How can cells maintain precise ionic compositions without exhausting their energy supplies? Why is cellular water so different from bulk water in its properties? How do cells maintain their structure and organization with such precision? Why do electromagnetic fields have such profound effects on cellular function? Ling's induction-based model answers all of these questions with a single elegant principle. Cells are electromagnetic systems that replicate and maintain their living state through inductive field effects. Now, it's important to understand how this differs from other electromagnetic theories in biology. Take Robert Becker's work in The Body Electric, for example. Becker focused on electrical currents for healing and regeneration, particularly in wound healing and bone repair. But Ling goes much further. He proposes electromagnetic induction as the fundamental mechanism for all cellular function, not just healing, but basic nutrient handling and cellular organization. Becker doesn't challenge conventional nutrient absorption. He focuses on electrical healing. Ling fundamentally rejects traditional absorption models. Nutrients are associated and induced into cellular structure through electromagnetic fields, not absorbed. Then there's Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance theory. Sheldrake's morphic fields carry memory and influence form and behavior patterns across time and space. But Ling's electromagnetic induction fields operate at the cellular level to structure water and organize nutrients in real time. Sheldrake is often criticized as lacking rigorous experimental validation, while Ling built his theory on decades of microelectrode measurements and quantifiable cellular experiments. Sheldrake is vague about the actual physical mechanism of morphic resonance, but Ling provides specific electromagnetic mechanisms that long-range information and energy transfer achieved by repetitions of short-range propagation of electrical polarization and depolarization. Alexander Gurvich's midogenetic radiation theory proposed that cells emit ultra-weak UV light that could stimulate cell division in other cells, a kind of non-absorption induction-like influence. But his ideas briefly gained attention and largely failed replication in experiments. Some theorists like Del Giudice, Froelich, and Hameroff envisioned the cytoskeleton and microtubules as supporting coherent electromagnetic oscillations, acting like information networks that orchestrate cellular behavior without conventional absorption of nutrients. But these remain theoretical and speculative. There's also Corentin Louis Kervran's biological transmutations theory, a French researcher who believed in something he called biological transmutations. Basically, he took laying hens and cut almost all the calcium out of their diet. At first, the eggs came out with soft shells, as you'd expect. But then he started feeding the birds potassium-rich things like rolled oats or mica. Pretty soon, the eggs were wildly coming out with hard, normal-looking calcium shells again. Kervran thought this meant the hens were somehow turning potassium into calcium inside their bodies, which, would be a kind of low-energy nuclear reaction. Most scientists today say, nope, or nada. The birds were just pulling calcium from their bones, or maybe there was hidden calcium in the feed, or grit, perhaps, but it's one of those odd little stories that still floats around, half science, half mystery, but his theories are widely discredited, and researchers believe that they lack scientific backing. So, moving forward, let's look at what makes Ling's work revolutionary, is what he called the no absorption principle. His hamburger analogy is particularly striking. Conventional biology assumes cells work like sponges, absorbing and releasing, but Ling demonstrates they work more like structured meat, where water and nutrients are electromagnetically bound in organized patterns. Unlike other electromagnetic theories, Ling specifically explains how cell water is polarized and oriented and thus dynamically structured. This addresses the point about electromagnetic replication rather than absorption. Ling's work, and by the way, I just tried to buy one of Ling's books on Amazon, and it was selling for about $500. Began with that fundamental observation that red blood cells contain virtually no sodium, despite living in sodium-rich blood. His electromagnetic induction theory explains this without requiring energy-consuming pumps. I came to believe that the body doesn't absorb anything in the traditional sense because the evidence kept pointing toward electromagnetic replication rather than chemical absorption. Every measurement, every observation, every cellular behavior made more sense when viewed through the lens of electromagnetic induction rather than membrane transport. The body works by induction, by creating and maintaining electromagnetic field patterns that organize matter into the precise configurations needed for life. We are, quite literally, electromagnetic beings whose cells replicate the conditions of life through inductive processes rather than absorptive ones. This understanding has profound implications for how we think about nutrition, health, disease, and the very nature of biological existence. We're not chemical machines that absorb and process materials. We're electromagnetic systems that replicate and maintain the patterns of life through inductive field effects. That's how I came to believe that the body doesn't absorb anything, and that biological function operates entirely through electromagnetic induction. The evidence, once you look at it through this lens, is, well, it's overwhelming. This is all seen, well, thought for food.